Welcome one and all to another episode here at the Damage Report. I'm John Adrola, very lucky to be joined today by Viviana Vigil. Viviana, welcome to the show.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. The only happy thing going on today. Obviously, it has not been the greatest day in the news. So we're glad to have you here to comment on what's been going on.
Yeah. It's been a rough week.
So we were talking yesterday, like an early little back and forth about what to cover. And I think you said something like, I know you've probably already talked a lot about the reproductive rights stuff. And I was like, I think we can find some more stuff to talk about on it. And I think that we did. In fact, there's quite a few angles that we need to get into. So thank you everyone for being here. Really appreciate you tuning in. We definitely do have more to say about what the SCOTUS is doing, how people are responding to it, how this might play out in practice. What the Democrats are doing. Spoiler alert, not much. But we do have other things as well. This is not just Cinco de Mayo. This is a notable day in the history of the pandemic. Bit of a dark holiday that we will be commemorating, and we've got more besides. In fact, we'll be diving into Cinco de Mayo a bit at the end of the show. I know that Viviana, you wanted to talk about that, so we're gonna have a little bit of just a fun little back and forth about that. And along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, if you're on a platform that allows for that, and you can send us comments, tweets, super chats, and everything, and we will respond as we go. But with that said, Viviana, are you ready to talk about some news?
I'm ready. Lay it on me, John.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start with this, in fact.
And if you're thinking, but that's illegal under HIPAA, right? Well, no. As one researcher pointed out, the medical information that you relay to your physician is highly protected, but if you go to a medical website and search for terms like HIV or abortion, that information is not protected at all. It's a system that seems ripe for abuse before you learn that some data brokers have offered lists such as suffering seniors, payday loan central, Hispanic, or even help needed, I am 90 days behind on bills.
Now, that is, of course, John Oliver in one of his episodes, I think just about like 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about data brokers and the ridiculous amount of data that they have and do sell concerning what you get up to in terms of your internet browsing and all that. Now, look, this is a concern in a lot of different areas. He touched on several of them there. But in the wake of the SCOTUS announcing that they're apparently going to be absolutely destroying Roe v. Wade and potentially any number of other rights that you've had throughout your life, rights to privacy in different aspects of your life. These data brokers have had renewed focus. So certainly timely episode by John Oliver. And now, did you know that there's all sorts of private data about your potential visits to facilities that might offer reproductive services that could be sold incredibly cheaply? So Vice did a write-up just a couple days ago about a website called SafeGraph. It's one of these data brokers that compiles information and sells it. And look at what they were able to get for just $160. So they found information related to visits to clinics that provide abortions, including Planned Parenthood specifically. What you can get is information about groups of people who visited the facilities, where they came from, how long they stayed at these facilities, and where they went to afterward. And if that potentially includes their private homes and things like that, well, I guess that's what you get for your $160. And a researcher who does work on cybersecurity had to say about this, it's bonkers dangerous to have abortion clinics and then let someone buy the census tracts where people are coming from to visit that abortion clinic. This is how you dox someone traveling across state lines for abortions, how you dox clinics providing this service. And SafeGraph, by the way, is just one of the organizations that up until thankfully this was reported on was providing this information. So what they do is that they get data from the SDKs, the software development kits of a number of different apps that you've probably either knowingly or unknowingly allowed to track you. Apps that have nothing to do with any of this, ostensibly. You'd have no reason to believe that you had to fear that these apps were collecting your data, but they do. And then they sell it to places like SafeGraph, who then sells it to other people. They collect information from many different apps, and that can infringe on your privacy rights in any number of different things. And from any number of different sources, by the way. It could be a prayer app or a weather app. Like many of these apps, by the way, that can become very popular, that might be free or cheap to purchase, are basically just sort of frosting on the cake, and the cake is collecting and selling your data. So now, Viviana, with concerns about not just abortion being made illegal, but states trying to criminalize going to a state where it is legal. This is just one more reason to be worried about their newfound ability to do that.
This is like the perfect storm of problems plaguing the US, right? Like the fact that our data is for sale and that our information, our data is probably the most sought after commodity currently worldwide. Everyone wants to know what everyone's buying, what they're looking at, what catches their attention. So this goes right into it. Of course, you have the people out there who are wanting to do bad things and punish people who are trying to get healthcare. I don't even want to call it reproductive care, John. I just want to call it healthcare, because we don't know what people are going to be, what sort of care they're going to be getting when they go to an abortion, when they go to a Planned Parenthood clinic, if they're going to get an abortion or if they're just going to get birth control or if they just have HPV. Like I don't know. And the fact that people are going to be nefariously looking through this and buying this data. There's a lot of really extremist organizations that are really passionate about this cause and will kill people. I mean, they've done it to doctors, they've attacked people, they do doxing on people. I mean, obviously in states like Texas where they're trying to criminalize it to the point where you can make money off of whistleblowing on somebody just thinking about getting an abortion. Really, really ugly stuff. I'm glad that this company decided to kind of not allow that to be accessible to the public. I know that they had made a statement saying that, it is data that's also used by researchers that can help and, bring information and help people kind of determine what resources are being used or are needed in the community. But we shouldn't be just allowing anyone to buy this information. If you're a university and you have researchers, maybe there's a process that they can apply to get some of this information, but the actual data of people's addresses and where they go, that's not really important, is it? Mm-hmm. So it is concerning. I'm glad that they made some steps to sort of backtrack on that. But like you said, it wasn't until after they were found out.
Yeah. By the way, look, I'm sure there are some legitimate purposes to some of this. The issue is that it exists in a context where so many people don't even know that this is what the apps are doing. That's what these data brokers rely on, is the fact that people are ignorant of that. It might say in the terms of service that it'll do this, and they purposefully make them incredibly convoluted and long so that people won't read them. And regular people should not have to read a massive legalese-filled document to know whether they might eventually be thrown in jail for going to Planned Parenthood. And that is really the concern here. So Safegraph says they're not gonna do this anymore. That's great. Hopefully every other one of the data brokers who does this will have a Vice write-up, because that's apparently the only way we can get them to do what's right. And by the way, stay tuned for if Safegraph eventually reverses on this in 6 months or a year.
Yeah, or 6 days. People aren't paying
attention to it. Or 6 days.
Exactly.
But the concern is, so it's gonna be made illegal. That's certainly what it looks like. But remember, it's not just that. It's also many of these states have instituted these bounty hunter formulations for how to do these laws. So like it costs $160 to get this data. Maybe to get other people's private, internet search histories might cost a little bit of money. So you might think, well, are people really gonna be trying to track everyone down? Well, I don't know. Maybe if you offer them $10,000.
Yeah, sure they will.
Exactly.
They'll quit their
They're
job.
financially incentivizing. Exactly. And so you could have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people whose livelihood becomes becoming digital spies that try to track down and get either, like think about it, with that data, could they track down the Uber drivers or something that might bring them to it? There's obviously so many concerns here. And again, nobody was, one of the things John Oliver was hoping for in the segment that he did was that Congress would start to take these data brokers seriously, but they didn't previously. This is just another added layer of this that needs to be taken into account. But we don't expect that the Democrats are gonna pass literally anything, let alone something technical like this.
Data is big business. They are not going to stop what they are going to do. And they barely, remember when it was like, well, should we even warn people that we're taking their data? They barely, and you still have to jump through hoops to not have your data accessed, right? And that's even difficult. And how benign, a weather app? Oh, what's the weather? Oh, its intent is to track me. Or a prayer app. I mean, how duplicitous is that? It's really ugly. But we live in this litigious society where this government, when you base rules and regulations just on legal. Oh, well, if they sign a paper, then it's okay. Well, where's the morality in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
If you sign it, if same thing with our healthcare, right? Oh well, we gave you the 40,000 page booklet that explains what's covered and what isn't. You're supposed to know everything. This is now the burden is being placed on the consumer to protect our data, to protect our rights. I mean, even to protect our health information, which is protected constitutionally and through HIPAA federally. So I don't understand how this is all happening without any regulations. And I do think the government does need to step in, because if HIPAA protects our healthcare, then this shouldn't be allowed at all. Then they shouldn't be able to track any medical facility. I mean, fine, you want to know that I went to Pollo Loco and got a burrito? Great. But I don't want anyone knowing where I go to the doctor, where I go to see my mental health care. All of that shouldn't be allowed to be accessible. And if researchers need it, then they should have a special way to be able to access that data that's private and it doesn't infringe on anybody's constitutional rights.
So look, there's obviously a lot more to this than we can get into just this clip, but it's a reminder that there is a lot that has changed from the last time that abortion was widely illegal, and now it will be the second time. A lot has changed. Obviously, the vast majority of people don't want this. That's one of the undemocratic parts of what's changed. But the tech landscape is totally different. Their ability to surveil you and track you.
Oh yeah, I mean, they
different.
used to send a girl away for summer, and then nobody knew anything. That's not possible now. We live in this digital world, so we're in a really tough time.
So I would just recommend a few things that if you're on your phone, maybe you want to quickly do. So one would be going into the settings for the location tracking and shutting that off to whatever extent you think you can. That's obviously important. And while you're doing it, definitely go to the YouTube app and ask to get all the notifications for the damage report, because otherwise you might not get them. And to allow YouTube notifications to go through, because sometimes when they update the software, they stop that from happening. So if you've noticed that you don't get notifications for like our live streams and videos, that might be why, and easily fixed.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't.
He doesn't know, and he doesn't really care, but he does know back during the 2016 election that he wanted there to be penalties, punishment for the woman.
For women.
They said it and they meant it. And now a Louisiana legislative committee just yesterday advanced a bill to make abortion a crime of homicide, in which the mother or those assisting her in terminating the pregnancy can be charged. And I think that's a pretty simple sentence, but in case it's not clear, the woman would be charged with homicide for having an abortion, and plausibly could go to jail for the rest of her life. Maybe could be executed by the state, because the same people that want to outlaw this think that the state should be able to decide who lives and who dies once you're in prison. So either lock up or kill the mom for having an abortion. So it took a little while, took a few years, but Trump is gonna get what he wants if this goes through. By the way, earlier this week, we were talking about the NRSC. So this is the Senate group for the Republicans. They had some talking points about how to manage this difficult conversation around what the SCOTUS is doing. And they said forcefully refute Democrat lies regarding GOP positions on abortion and women's health care, adding that Republicans don't want to take away contraception, mammograms, and female health care, or throw doctors and women in jail. Oops, no, they do, and they will. They do consider it murder. They've been saying that for years and years and years. And now in this state, they want to do that. By the way, they're advancing this even though they know that it's unconstitutional. State representative on the Republican side, Danny McCormick, said that it should move forward, even though right now it's obviously unconstitutional. And even though the Supreme Court is set to destroy Roe v. Wade, he's saying we can't wait on the Supreme Court. By the way, Louisiana already has a trigger law, which will immediately criminalize abortion statewide when Roe v. Wade is overturned. And so they want to subject doctors and others who perform abortions up to 10 years in prison. The current law, though, doesn't allow you to lock up the woman. And so they don't consider their current insane law, which is waiting for the SCOTUS to act, regressive enough. And so all of these men want to get out in front of it and make sure that the doctor is in one cell and the woman is in the next, Viviana. So that's cool.
It's just it's sort of surreal, John. We've read and we watched The Handmaid's Tale, and it's very surreal when you start criminalizing healthcare for women. And when they say that they don't want to get rid of mammograms and pap smear, yeah, they do actually. They don't want to pay for any of it. They don't want to pay for our healthcare, even if it doesn't have anything to do with us being pregnant or not pregnant. They're not trying to help women who can't conceive. It's really a horrific situation we're in when we have the Supreme Court poised to overturn something that has been such an accomplishment for human rights in this country. We see it all over the world. I mean, this is something that should be a woman's choice. It is not an easy choice to make for some women. For some women, it is. It is a choice that they need to make on their own. I shared with you this viral quote that's been going around. It's by this Christian pastor out of Alabama, and he talks about how the unborn are a convenient group to advocate for because they don't make any demands. And then once they're born, then they're not unborn anymore. You don't have to care about them. They don't require any sort of care. It's a very, very convenient way to be this like sanctimonious, we're really trying to be for the morality of the country. I have 2 friends right now who are pregnant by choice. Wonderful, congratulations to them. Both of them have recently turned down really great positions because they weren't able to see the 6-month contract through because they're due in 4 months.
Yeah.
So that is a choice that woman has to make in regards to her career so that she can have a baby. What if she doesn't have the ability to not work? Now she's forced to. Now, do we get disability then when you're pregnant and you can't work? What happens here? None of that is being is of a concern. None of that is being addressed at all. It's just simply this like black or white issue. And frankly, if you believe it's murder, then it is a black and white issue to you. But that's where we have to start separating the church and state. We have to start separating that from people's minds. Like you can have your morality issues, but the state is going to create what's fair and for everybody and what everybody has a right to make sure what their own morality is. Their own decision. It's a really tough decision. I used to be a social worker. I took a little girl who was 17. Nobody wanted to take her. She needed an adult to go with her because she was a ward of the state. She wanted to go and get an abortion. And I took her and she was very emotionally, immature. This was something that she wanted to do and she wasn't ready to be a mother. She wasn't ready to be, have those obligations. She herself was an orphan. I don't even know the circumstances in which she got pregnant. She seemed like it might've been consensual. She wasn't, telling me otherwise. But she was very certain about her decision. And I was happy to be there for her, even though for me, it is a very difficult decision if I had to make it personally. But I was so glad to be able to be there for her so she could make it. Because that's something that's gonna stay with you for life, one way or another. And I'm glad that she was empowered to make that decision on her own. Nobody forced her to do it either way. And it just saddens me and for all of the young women out there that they're not gonna have that ability. They're not gonna have that choice. And it's not gonna stop abortion, we all know. It's not gonna stop it. It's just going to make it more dangerous. And it's essentially class welfare for those who cannot drive out of state or fly to whatever island or whatever all these other people who can afford to do that can do. So if you're in a position where you're in a small town, you don't have any money, you get raped, you get pregnant on your own accord. It doesn't really matter. Now you have a difficulty in access to healthcare that you need, whether it is prenatal care or whether it's to access an abortion. Yeah. You can't go out of state. You don't have the money. You don't have a car. All of these things. This is attacking the lower classes, economically lower classes, not morality wise. But when you're of a lower socioeconomic status, you don't have the resources that somebody in Trump's family, say, has. Some of his children, if they wanted to get an abortion, probably could access it very easily.
Yeah, no like Republican congressman is gonna like have a talk where like his mistress or whatever wants to have an abortion. He's like, well, no, I'm sorry, it's illegal. You have to go through. No, it's ridiculous. Obviously,
it's sad.
Yeah, it's obviously unequal racial lines, class lines, as we're gonna get into briefly. Yeah, and as you pointed out, so they'll force you to bear the child. And obviously there's massive costs associated with that. It might be more difficult to hold or keep certain positions. So, well, obviously then the government has a responsibility since they decided for you that you had to have the child. They're clearly gonna help, right? Yeah. No, not at all. As we were talking about the pre-show this morning, Brian Kilmeade was attacking some Biden, one of the new appointees for a position in the Biden administration, because she's pregnant and so she is gonna have to take some time off. He was like attacking her, but you want her to. What are you talking about? Like
the hypocrisy.
No, but that's the thing. They don't see this as an inconsistency. They want to force people to give birth, and then those people presumably just be at home. Why aren't you married to a man who will take care of you and pay for all of this? That's what they want.
I go back to that pastor whose little statement went viral. He actually put it out in 2018 because Alabama was attacking abortion rights back then. But he talks about how the unborn are not they're morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, the addicted, or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condensation or complain that you're not politically correct, unlike widows. They don't ask you to question the patriarchy, unlike orphans. They don't need money, education, or childcare, unlike undocumented people, which I think we're gonna touch on later on in the show. But it's a really convenient group to advocate for because you can choose when and where you want to advocate for them. Once they're born, you're done. You don't have to do anything. In fact, if they're on their own, pull yourself up from the bootstraps. Oh, your mom couldn't have done it? She shouldn't have had a baby then. But this is a slippery slope. Once you start restricting my access, any woman's access, or any person, but really it's women who are being attacked now. Once you restrict my access to healthcare, then it's a slip. What else are you going to restrict? Are you going to prevent me from birth control? Yeah.
They would very much like to stop you from having birth control. Yes.
Yeah, if the birth rates go down, well, maybe we want to encourage pregnancy. What happens to women who conceive out of wedlock? Are they going to be targeted? I mean, what if you have a child under 18? What happens to you then? Are you going to get charges of homicide if you want to have an abortion at 16 years old? You're raped. I don't even like to bring in these like extreme cases of rape and incest. I don't even want to talk about any of that because it's really irrelevant. This needs to be an issue for a person to decide on their own. I don't give a crap about what all the other circumstances are. And it's a really very, very touchy issue for a lot of people. And I really sympathize for those that are feeling this like moral thing for like unborn babies. And I get it, but I really challenge you to feel that same passion for born babies. That's what I really, which include young women who are 13, 14, 15, 17 years old, who need your help to be able to access the healthcare that they need. That may not ever include an abortion. But once you start restricting and governing people's bodies, it's just mind blowing that we're even here. And I know that we saw this happening with the change in the Supreme Court, but I don't really know that there's anything we can do, not with these sort of like, I don't know, impotent Democrats at the helm right now. They're not. I mean, no pun intended.
Well, there are things. There are things that we've been talking about throughout the week that are not. They're not perfect solutions to this, but obviously, states that have people that are not, absolute lizard cavemen, should be trying to expand access and, help people come in from other states when they need these services. That's what we're basically looking for is things to patch some of the cracks and the damage that's being done, because we unfortunately don't have responsible politicians who will actually fight back against this, despite the fact that people don't want this to happen.
People don't want it.
And
they do not. You voted for if you asked everyone to vote right now, people would say they would still want to complete.
No, the polls are completely clear. They're indisputable. But really fast there would be. This is my advice, I guess, to the pro-lifers who so rarely care about life in so many different areas. In terms of moral consistency and also persuasive power, you dumb donkeys, why don't you at least pretend to care after the child is born? Like that would be morally consistent to actually, well, okay, then let's provide funding for when people are pregnant so that they can be safe and everything. So we don't have such a high rate of death at childbirth, which is ridiculous, and it's a worldwide outrage that it's as high as it is. But then also make sure that they have an education, that they're drinking clean water, that they have access to healthcare and all that, and that the mother does as well. Why not have that for consistency? And also, you might finally be able to persuade some people to your side, which you've been unable to do for decades and decades and decades. If you showed a bit of consistency, and if people thought that this wasn't like the most like cruelty focused interpretation of what you think Christianity has to say about abortion, but they don't do that. They don't learn. Decades and decades They think that just like showing you photos of fetuses or whatever is going to persuade people. And what do you know? It hasn't. That's why they're still losing in terms of public opinion on this issue.
Yeah, who's going to pay for these? Who's going to pay for these live births? Who's going to pay for these deliveries? Then you're going to chastise the women
Pregnant
for being on Medi-Cal and being on this, and this is an ongoing problem. It's really short-sighted. It's really an ugly attempt to really silence women and to control women's bodies. That's really the only thing that I can see as their point.
100%. Okay, somebody just started on the YouTube a poll where the two options are dumb donkey and lizard caveman. I don't know who started this. One of our mods. It's fun. Thank you to our mods. Anyway,
I vote for lizard caveman.
Exactly. So with that said, we do have to take our first break. We come back, we do have more on this, including talking about those incredibly impotent Democrats. So we will be back with that after this. Okay, everybody, with that said, we have a little bit more to talk about on this topic. Let's jump into this.
Roe versus Wade is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. It was decided in 1973. It has been challenged on a number of occasions, and the Supreme Court has reaffirmed the decision. When a decision is challenged and it is reaffirmed, that strengthens its value.
Roe versus Wade, decided in 1973, is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. It has been reaffirmed, so a good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court, worthy as treatment of precedent like any other.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Been reaffirmed many times. Casey is precedent on precedent.
So that is a bit of an ad by Midas Touch, pointing out that all of them lied. The conservative Supreme Court justices lied, and the people that they lied to knew that they were lying. They were chosen because Republican presidents, almost exclusively chosen not by a majority of the population, knew that on this topic that a majority of the population did not want it to be overturned. They had to choose religious zealots, and so that's what they did. And they sent them out there. And they lied to the Senate over and over again. And by the way, I am not playing this ad. I doubt Midas Touch was putting out this ad because this will get through to conservatives. And they'll be like, oh my God, dear God, they did lie. No, they knew that they were lying. They wanted them to lie. But I want to get through to some who might define themselves as centrists or moderates that still have this idea that senators on the one hand or Supreme Court justices are anything other than partisan political actors. That's what they're there. That's what they're there to do. They will continue to lie to you. You cannot be shocked at this point when that is what happens. So Viviana, I know again, we're not surprised that they were willing to lie. Nobody thought Amy Coney Barrett wasn't gonna try to kill Roe v. Wade.
But there is a surprise to me because if you've ever known any judges, there's this sort of like bromance between judges that they sort of respect each other's decision. Like that's like the way it goes, right? When a judge decides something, challenging that is a really big deal, especially the Supreme Court. It's kind of like, okay, well, it's done. It's been reaffirmed. So the fact that they're willing to go, well, maybe not. What else is on the chopping block? What's next? What else that my whole life, Roe versus Wade has been established. My whole life, abortion has been legal. There's many other rights, human rights that I've enjoyed over the past 40 years that are they now challenged? I don't know, because these Supreme Court justices don't seem to have any respect for what's happened in the past 40 years. Yeah. Plus, who knows, how far are we gonna reinstitute slavery? I mean, how far do we go? We're gonna be extremists.
I don't know. I mean, they've spent decades trying to rewrite the history of slavery and implying that it was not that bad in a bunch of different ways. Again, like when I say that there's no end to it, it isn't just because it is clear that that's what they want. But what we talk constantly about what Republican politicians and right-wing media members do to delude their audience. A lot of these things that like Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson aren't actually worked up over abortion. They're rich people. They're going off and they're eating foie gras and stuff. That's what they actually do. But they need something to delude people. So the thing about that is, once they outlaw abortion, okay, they've done that. They've satisfied the right for a little bit. So what happens in a month?
Yeah.
The right's just gonna be satisfied. They're not gonna start to look around and wonder why their lives are in economic ruin. No, they're gonna need more. It's gonna have to be something more extreme. And so for all these reasons, we're worried about that. And by the way,
it's gonna go back to criminalizing poverty. Then it's gonna go back to criminalizing being poor. And then we're gonna go back to institutionalizing people. I mean, we already want to put women in jail for having an abortion.
For sterilization, like the right to avoid the government forcibly sterilizing you follows the same sort of judicial train of thought as Roe v. Wade. So now that potentially could be opened up.
There have been all kinds of things that have been tried to impose on poor people, forced sterilization, forced drug tests, really, really ugly stuff that we have been fighting for decades. At least in my lifetime, my adult lifetime, I've recognized a lot of these sort of, potential laws have come into place. Even in the state of California, it was supposedly very, progressive. But this is what's scary. Once we roll back Roe v. Wade, getting it back is going to be a real tough battle. A really tough one.
I agree. And the right will say, again, because they're worried about the electoral implications of what they're doing right now, they'll say, well, why are you talking about us doing more? No, Alito says in the decision that it's not gonna go any further than that. Yeah, he also said that he wasn't gonna overturn Roe v. Wade. Again, he's a liar. So when Tucker Carlson last night says, no, it's in there, he says he's not gonna do it anymore. No, Tucker Carlson knows that he lied. He wants him to lie. He's lying to you about the lies. That's all it is. Anyway, another liar that I'd like to make sure that we don't miss out on is Joe Manchin. So Joe Manchin was like, wait, is it possible that they lied to me when they told me they wouldn't be overturning this? He said yesterday, I talked about this in the pre-show, he's looking into whether Kavanaugh lied to him about Roe. What do you mean whether he lied to you? This is after the leak. Well, that was yesterday. So now he apparently told Manu Raju that he told me when asked if he believed Justice Kavanaugh was telling the truth on Roe in 2018. And Manchin said, we're gonna go back through all the things we have. We had meetings with him to find out what he said and how it was actually presented to us. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
First of all, yes, he lied to you. Second of all, you're gonna go back and like go through your digital records to find out whether he lied to you years ago. They're getting rid of Roe v. Wade now. What does it matter at this point? First of all, yes, he lied, but what's the difference? So if you find out that he definitively lied to you, you'll support overturning the filibuster to make sure that we enshrine Roe v. Wade into federal. No, you won't. No, you won't.
If Joe Manchin comes out as the unlikely hero, I'll still applaud it. I mean, we need any help we can get. He's not gonna. That is a very, very sad state of affairs right now with the Democratic Party being in charge. They don't care.
Exactly.
They don't care. They're looking for votes. I just thought too, gosh, well, if we start criminalizing women for having abortions, then they won't be able to vote anymore.
Do we think that the right is a problem with them? There have been right wing.
No, they have no problems with that. But that
commenters who implied that they shouldn't. Ann Coulter got popular on the right saying that women should be allowed to vote. Anyway, and by the way, if you're thinking, well, maybe this implies that Joe Manchin is taking this threat seriously. They asked him about what would happen in West Virginia if it was overturned. He has no idea what the law is. He doesn't care.
Court prepares to overturn Roe v. Wade, I am calling on Democratic Party leadership to withdraw their support of Henry Cuellar, who is the last anti-choice Democrat in Congress. At every turn, my congressman has stood in opposition to the Democratic Party agenda, from being anti-union to being anti-choice. And with the House majority on the line, Cuellar could very much be the deciding vote on the future of reproductive rights in this country, and we just cannot afford that risk.
So that is Jessica Cisneros, who's in a primary battle that'll be decided in just a few weeks against Henry Cuellar, who is, as she pointed out, the last Democrat in the House who is proudly anti-choice. And he has said, as a Catholic, I do not support abortion. However, we cannot have an outright ban. There must be exceptions in case of rape, incest, and danger to the life of the mother. So that puts him at average Republican 4 years ago, basically. That's the position he's at. So for the vast majority of abortions, you will not be allowed to do it. And by the way, this is like, again, like fundamentally, this is demonstrating that he does not think people have a right to control what happens to their body. There's like exceptions where it's really about like the nature of the event, but it's not about your fundamental humanity. And so anyway, back in September, he was the only Democrat to vote against the Women's Health Protection Act, a bill that would strengthen access to abortion and prohibit states from singling out or impeding access to abortion services. So this is both in word and in deed. He is against your right to choose. And Democratic leadership is trying to do everything they can to make sure that he beats Jessica Cisneros, who would be a great Democrat in the House, and also would support unions and would support your right to choose. So why are they choosing him? They have a lot to answer for in that. Why is Nancy Pelosi? Why are James Clyburn? I want to read some of the statements they've said about him, or specifically what they've said this week about your right to choose. James Clyburn said, for 49 years, women have had the constitutional right to make choices about their body. The whole notion of politicians controlling those decisions is beyond the pale. It ought to be alarming to us. I agree. Nancy Pelosi says Democrats believe that every woman everywhere has the fundamental human right to reproductive care, one that is not limited by background, income, or zip code. Her health decisions, including whether or not to terminate a pregnancy, belong to her. Or maybe to Henry Cuellar. Maybe he should be allowed to. It ought to be alarming, James Clyburn says, unless it's Henry Cuellar, in which case, yes, that guy should be able to decide for you what happens to your body. And so they are trying to get him elected. This isn't about making sure that a Democrat is elected. Jessica Cisneros would win in his place, but they are there trying to make sure that again, like symbolically, Viviana, it could not be stronger.
The Democratic Party is anti-union now. That's been the case for a while, and so they're not going to support anybody who's pro-union, who's pro-labor movement, pro the people. They're not. And I swear Nancy Pelosi has some book, like, what am I supposed to say in this circumstance? Let me turn to that page and read that, because that woman doesn't care about anybody but her own pocketbook. It's disgusting. I can't wait till she's gone. Not dead, just gone from office. No, just to be clear.
Exactly. And there you're talking about the natural passage of time and not even much more of it. So again, it's not a threat or anything like that.
I just want she lived to 1,000, just out of office.
Yeah, but no, I would love, and you're not gonna get it. You're not. There was The Intercept wrote about this, but you're not gonna get it. Like Chuck Todd is not gonna ask Nancy Pelosi, hey, so in a time when everyone is fired up about the right to choose being eliminated, why are you stumping for an anti-choice Democrat? They're not gonna ask it.
They won't,
because Chuck Todd wants Henry Cuellar to be elected. Let's be clear about that.
He got where he is by just doing what everybody wanted, because there's no reason he should have a show.
100%. By the way, I don't know which. I think this is Sophie. So Sophie's making sure that I get to this. This is a quote from Joe Biden, who said, "If the Supreme Court does overturn Roe v. Wade, quote, it will fall on voters to elect pro-choice officials this November." Yeah. Well, I guess if the Democratic Party gives you the ability to do that, if they
never mind that we already have. Never mind, we already voted
exactly.
for it.
No, that's totally true too. But I'm saying, okay, then Joe Biden, get your ass to the border. And go and stump for Cisneros so that they can at least vote for a pro-choice politician. Joe Biden, why? Again, at the very least, they should be forced to explain why in this week of all weeks they would be doing this, but they're not going to have to do that.
Because they don't care.
Now that said, unfortunately we're burning through this hour, so we got to go to our second break. We come back, we're going to hear from Biden about something sort of tangentially related to this. It's as close as he's probably going to come, but we'll be back after this. And at the same time that they are cheering the destruction of any consideration of some sort of fundamental rights of privacy, they are like pretending that is what they want. They want to stop the tech companies and social media from getting in their lives and everything. And like, why don't you just leave us? But so you should be left be when it comes to wearing masks, or like whether your kids ever learn about the LGBTQ community and stuff like that. But when it comes to other people's bodies, you should definitely be involved. Also, if they decide to like smoke a weed or something. No, seriously, they think that like someone smoking weed 2,000 miles away should not be allowed. These are fundamentally irrational people. Let's be very clear about that.
Really are.
I drank weed-laced root beer last night. They think that I should be in jail for that. We're dealing with crazy people.
I would still be high if I did that. I don't know how you're functioning.
Exactly. That might be. I was trailing a little bit this morning. That might be why. Anyway, I didn't drink the whole thing. Anyway, with that, but that's my right because it's my body, and it ain't the most dangerous thing I put into my body yesterday. By the way, I had Capriati's. That is a hit to the gut. But anyway, with that said, let's jump into another topic. It was delicious though. Let's jump into this.
This was almost half the people who voted in 2020. Does the president ever feel maybe there could have been done? He could have done more early on to try and reach out to those people. And does the extreme rhetoric basically signal that there's no going back now, and they're sort of out of beyond the pale for him? And
I think, but the president will be judged by Americans by his actions and what he does to make their lives better. And the point he's making is that there are the platform of and the policies of far too many of these Republicans, these MAGA Republicans, as he refers to them, follow the whims of calling out Mickey Mouse and opposing policies that will help make the lives better of many, many Americans who.
Okay, so that is Jen Psaki responding to a reporter who's asking about Joe Biden, referring to the MAGA crowd as really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history. That's what he said Wednesday morning. A case could certainly be made, and people are freaking out about it, of course, trying to make it into, is this like the deplorables thing? He called them extreme. And I want to be very clear, the video that we showed you, the most interesting thing about that video is that happened this week, that video. A reporter asked, is he implying that the MAGA movement is beyond the pale at this point? That is after the anti-vax stuff. He was asked that after, to be clear, the insurrection, after the every Democrat is a groomer, after the Disney is trying to like roast your children and sell them as sandwiches and everything. Like that's after all this. Biden is the crazy one because he said this is an extreme political movement, Viviana. I think that is pretty amazing.
This has been the tactic that the Republican Party has been using in this administration, but really for the last probably 20 some years, where the bait and switch gaslighting, right? Like, oh, you said something that was not polite. Now you're not polite. I thought we were supposed to be nice to each other. That's exactly what they're doing here. And you know what? Frankly, we need somebody who's going to be standing behind saying things like that. Yeah. They're the most extreme. You're dealing with a politician like Trump, who I even hate calling him a politician at this point because he's more of like a personality. I don't know. But he says what he says. He'll lie, he'll back, he doesn't try to soften it. We need somebody like that, Biden. That was the problem with Biden. We knew that him coming in, we were kind of pushed against the corner because they screwed us with Bernie, just like they're screwing us with Jessica Cisneros. Like the DNC is so cliquish and they have so many people lining their pockets. You got to stay on their track. You got to stay on whatever they're tracking, whoever they're backing. They're not going to vary their tactics at all. So he's going to back off. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. Oh, you're not extreme at all. You just stormed the Capitol. That's not extreme.
Yeah.
Have some balls. You're on your way out, Biden. We are screwed. If you run again, which I hope he doesn't, he's going to lose. What do you have to lose? You're on the end of your life. Again, I'm not saying I want you to die, but you are an older man. What do you have? Go out with a bang, bro. Just, I don't even
as
know.
of right now, he hasn't like walked it back a ton. We'll see. But like the idea that a reporter is actually asking that, like, again, the other side has declared everyone who disagrees with them to be people who sleep with and then eat children. But he said it was that they were extreme. By the way, he said that in response to a question having to do with the Supreme Court. They are stripping away your right to choose. That's what they're doing.
Rights.
That's not even just a crazy belief or a crazy thing to say. That's an action that they're doing. That is radical. That's extreme. How dare you imply that they're extreme? Isn't that like again the standards? Like
he will walk it back more though, John. He's not yet, but he will because he's such a coward. And he's so afraid. They really think that if they play into us, they might have a chance to win some of these deplorables. I'll call them deplorables. I don't care. They are extreme, and they're never gonna vote for him ever.
No, that reporter, and I don't know who the reporter was. Who's like, are you implying that they're beyond the pale, dude? Again, don't know who you are. You're a reporter. Do you know what that movement thinks about you and your line of work? You should Google it. It's actually pretty wild what they say and do to reporters. Go to a Trump rally as a reporter. See how that goes. You see if maybe they're kind of beyond the pale. Anyway, with that said, we are rapidly running out of time. I want to make sure that we get to as much as possible. So Why don't we jump into this?
The challenges put on our public systems is extraordinary. Know this, and that is Texas already long ago sued the federal government about having to incur the cost of that education program.
Yes.
It's a case called Plyler versus Doe. And the Supreme Court ruled against us on the issue about denying, or let's say Texas having to bear that burden. I think we will resurrect that case and challenge this issue again, because the expenses are extraordinary and the times are different than when Plyler versus Doe was issued many decades ago.
Very, very basically, Plyler versus Doe means if your kid is in the district, the kid gets a free public education. And of course, that burden goes to wherever that district is.
Okay, so that, of course, is Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, speaking to, as my producer points out, some guy wearing silk pajamas, I guess. I don't know. I wear the pineapple shirt, so I guess I can't throw stones. But what they're talking about there, if it's not easy to follow, is they're talking about a decision, Plyler versus Doe, way back in 1982. Now, the fact that it's way back doesn't mean that they won't try to overturn it again. Precedent doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it's been there. That Supreme Court decision required states to offer free public education to all children, including those of undocumented immigrants. And so that is what he's saying we're going to challenge, Greg Abbott. They want to knock that out. Ostensibly, immediately, what he's admitting to is so that we don't have to offer an education to children of undocumented immigrants. So that is by itself awful, hateful, cruel, needless. But do you think, Viviana, that that's where they would end? This movement, which has despised public education for longer than we've been alive, which frequently during presidential campaigns will talk about like literally destroying the Department of Education. You think that they won't eventually dabble at the possibility of getting rid of public education entirely in Texas? I find that to be incredibly plausible. But we can start where we're already at, which is they want to block the children of undocumented immigrants from having access to an education.
Yeah, completely unconstitutional. It's been tried by many, many states, Texas being one, California being one with Prop 182. And what happens is when you start to require proof of citizenship for attending public school or getting emergency health care, it really gets into tricky unconstitutional waters, because you start, who's getting targeted, who's getting asked for their papers. It's really ugly for the same people who are arguing on behalf of the unborn to say things like this about school-age children.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't have access to learn how to read or write, and calling it a burden, and using words like illegal immigrants as well as not, instead of undocumented, because this language is important as well. These are children. And they can try all they want. I really hope that this Supreme Court doesn't back away completely on human rights across. I mean, really anything is possible at this point, because they don't seem to have any respect for precedent. But this is something that many, many states have tried to do. Texas has been really big on it. And you're right on the attack of public education. With the influx of charter schools and private schools and voucher programs, the budgets for public educations have increasingly been shrunk. The pandemic had a real negative effect on public education and the education of children across the country. So we're in a really tough predicament right now in regards to public education. You would think the First Lady, being an educator herself, she claimed she was gonna get her elbows dirty and whatever, greased elbows, I don't know what the saying is. She was supposed to get in there and start really helping. Has she?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But no, she hasn't.
Elbow grease. She's supposed to put her elbow grease in it, right? I haven't even seen her. Where is she? What is she doing?
I don't know. She was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's really the only time I've seen her. But anyway, and look, on the other side, again, if you so this is already extreme enough. If you think that I'm crazy that they won't go further, think about the pressure that Greg Abbott is going to be feeling with the right wing, who spent years now going to school board meetings trying to destroy the individual lives of educators. They think they're all groomers. You don't think that they're going to try to kill public education entirely? They want us uneducated. Anyway,
no,
unfortunately, that is no, Viviana. That's unfortunately all the time we have for this first hour. We'll talk more on the other side. If you've been listening to the podcast or on the linear platforms, thank you so much. If you're on Twitch, YouTube, the Members app, a bunch of other places, we do have more to get to. Viviana and I will be back, so don't go anywhere. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.